welcome to the stage Joanne Valentine, first Vice President of the Board of Directors.
Thank you. We're honored to have you all here. And did you notice that the sun came out because you came here? We're going to have this celebration of Michael's life today because we're going to be playing, not me, but our wonderful orchestra is going to be playing his very favorite pieces. So I know you will enjoy them, and I know he will enjoy them. We are honored today to have two very special people working with us and working with the orchestra. Our conductor will be Peter Nolan, and we are blessed to have him here. He is known in the community, and we're really, really lucky that he's stepped up and said, yeah, I'd love to do that. Also coming in from New York City, we have Constantine, who has performed before. He is an unbelievable pianist, and I know you're going to enjoy the afternoon. So sit back, have great memories of Maestro Michael, because he's the one that brought us to this point. Thank you.
Good afternoon and welcome. My name is Pete Nowlin, and it's an incredible honor for me to have been invited by the members, staff, and board of the Auburn Symphony to lead today's concert and to be part of remembering Maestro Michael. I've known Michael for 25 years. I moved to Sacramento 25 years ago and met him very quickly. And I have always had the utmost admiration and respect for his work here and with the Apollo Orchestra both. Today we'll perform 6 pieces for you, and with each we will reflect on some of what made Michael so special as an artist, an intellect, a leader, and a musician. We opened with this lovely piano concerto because a concerto is the consummate form of collaboration in music. And Michael was a consummate collaborator, both musically and interpersonally. His ability to engage and bring people together was one of his most excellent features that allowed many of his great triumphs and successes. One of his favorite collaborators was Konstantin Sukovetsky. I went over that several times. Konstantin Sukovetsky. And Konstantin, as most of you know, has flown in from New York in order to be part of today and would like to say a few words before he performs again.
When I think about Michael, I think about his love of tradition, his understanding of structure, and above all, his spirituality. And perhaps there is no other composer that embodies these qualities more than Johann Sebastian Bach. So, Michael, wherever you are, this is for you.
Is he wonderful or what? We are so blessed to have him here, and we're blessed to have the audience we have. We're blessed to have the orchestra we have, and we're blessed to have the music lovers of this community that we have, and it's all because everybody gives, and Michael gave a lot. His brother sent a letter that I'd like to read to you. His brother and his sister-in-law came from Australia for Michael's funeral, and he sent a letter, and he asked if someone would read this, please. It goes, "Nothing could have prepared my sister Wendy and me for the phone call we received from the other side of the world to say our brother Michael had been killed in a car accident. Wendy last met with him nearly 2 years ago in London and had seen him since. I hadn't seen him since 9 years ago in Australia. However, we were fully aware of his wonderful and fulfilling life that he had made for himself in Northern California, and in particular his involvement with the Auburn Symphony Orchestra. My wife Margot and I were able to fly over for his funeral, and we were very privileged to be able to attend some of the Kinderconcert that Michael would have conducted on the 11th of February. Kudos to our orchestra for continuing and making this available to the children in our community under very difficult circumstances." It is a great tribute to the members of the orchestra and to his friend conductor, Ryan Murphy, that this concert was able to go ahead so soon after Michael's tragic accident, and it was wonderfully attended. The one thing in particular that his letter states that I think is really the key that we all have to Michael's sunshine that he brought into our lives in the symphony. In his last Maestro's message for the last concert he conducted for the symphony, Michael said, "Virtually every conductor seems to count Bruckner as among the composers he most wishes to conduct, and I am no exception. To conduct a Bruckner symphony is a musical equivalent to climbing Mount Everest." And if any of you attended that symphony, it was phenomenal. Michael had been climbing Mount Everest all his life, and it's quite poignant that he reached the top just 2 weeks before his untimely death. This is from his brother David in Sydney, and we were all very lucky to be able to meet him. Now I'm going to introduce someone to you who is really one of the founding blocks for this whole orchestra. Nimrod Variation. Studied at the University of Montana, Missoula, graduated with a BA in clarinet and theory in 1956, taught the orchestra in the Missoula public schools, graduate work in theory and composition, moved to Sacramento in 1960 and taught orchestra, choir, jazz band, and theory at Foothills High School. He moved to Auburn in 1974, taught clarinet, saxophone, and started the Auburn Symphony. So he is one of the building blocks that has brought us along this way. One thing that they didn't put down here is something that I know. He was the leader of the group that hired Michael. So it's real important that he has an opportunity to talk to us. Monroe, thank you for hiring Michael, and here you go.
Thank you. Thank you very much. And earlier, when I walked backstage for a few minutes and shook hands and had many hugs from orchestra people that I haven't seen for many years, it was a truly moving moment and a great pleasure. And thank you for being here today to help us celebrate Michael. Indeed, Crossroads. Let me get this straightened out first. I didn't think I was going to be this nervous. But Crossroads, Michael, a phenomenon. Our community has lost a dedicated classical musician Michael Goodwin had the talent, training, and keen musical insight to lead the Auburn Symphony steadily upward. His loss brings to the orchestra to its second crossing of the roads in its upward path. Allow me to take you back to the orchestra's first crossroad. At the end of the 1994 season, the Auburn Symphony Executive Committee knew the orchestra needed a new presence on the podium. The orchestra's first conductor, Clyde Quick, formed the orchestra, set the symphony season at 3 concerts, and among other accomplishments, initiated the Messiah sing-along. Maestro Quick brought a dignified level of classical music to Auburn and achieved a presence in Auburn. Unfortunately, interest in the orchestra diminished. It did not create enough musical interest at the time to sustain it. The executive committee formed a search committee comprised of 1 member from each section of the orchestra manager, 1 member from the board of directors, and 1 member from the guild, 7 members in all. I think you will all remember the board member. That was Marilyn Gelbach. As orchestra manager, I chaired the committee. Publicity sent to Valley newspapers and Bay Area newspapers brought forth 15 applicants. 1 member of the search committee, principal cellist Horatio Edens, contacted Michael Goodwin, conductor of the Renaissance Orchestra and artistic director of music at Oregon House. We selected 4 applicants to review and interview, Michael being one of them. At the conclusion of the interviews, Michael Goodwin was our unanimous choice. As the 1995 season progressed, Michael's musical ability and desires were clearly evident. He communicated often, clearly, and sensitively to everyone. And with his dry, wry British wit, he helped bring the orchestra and music closer to all of us. The symphony's bylaws stipulate that the symphony's leader is not only its musical conductor, but also its artistic director. Thus, Michael had virtual autonomy in the selection of music that was appropriate for the musicians and the audience, a vital concept. Michael Goodwin was a dedicated classical musician. His ability to choose music from that repertoire, accessible to both musician and audience, was superb. He challenged both, but did not overreach either. He told me that his instrument was the symphony orchestra. Using the orchestra as his medium, he recreated the music he chose for listener and musician. And he did so with complete heart and mind and with love. To say that we will miss Michael is an understatement at best. His musical legacy will live on in our hearts as members of the orchestra, as members of the community, and in the hearts of thousands of children he reached through the kindergartens. His ability to communicate to children and adults will be sorely missed by all of us. In 17 years, he raised the quality of the Auburn Symphony to a level for which I might have wished, yet hardly dared to hope. His tenure provided more than enough musical interest to keep the Auburn Symphony healthy. Indeed, his dedication to this community orchestra was nothing less than phenomenal. Michael, we will continue your good work with love and dedication to classical music. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Our next piece is by Frederick Delius. Michael shared a number of traits with his countryman, Frederick Delius. Both chose to live abroad from England, and both chose to live in the countryside. Though being musicians, we normally find them in the urban centers. Both shared a love of nature and a love of calm introspection and reflection that is greatly characterized in the next piece, On Hearing the First Cuckoo of Spring. Michael had a wonderful gift to both have and to inspire passion. He could inspire passion in those around him, and he brought great passion to what he did. He also had a love of literature and a great story. So we put those two things together and programmed the best example we could come up with, which is Tchaikovsky's Overture Fantasy, Romeo and Juliet, an exceedingly passionate work based on an exceedingly passionate story. One which, though tragic, is actually in the end a story of redemption as the families lay down their arms and come together at the end of the play. That passion that Michael brought to everything he did carries on in his orchestra and his organization, and will carry it forward to a bright and promising future. One moment, logistical. I need to get my notes back before the next piece. The notes that not right now. After this is fine. Okay, thank you. That would be great. Great, thank you. Our next work, Finlandia of Sibelius, was composed at a time when Finnish nationalism was building and preparing to overwhelm and end hundreds of years of subjugation at the hands of the Russians and Swedes. The piece was actually a covert protest of Russian censorship and was often played with inane-sounding titles like Upon Waking in the Morning in the Beautiful Finnish Countryside, in order to disguise its covert mission. At its heart, Finlandia is about triumphing over obstacles. We hear first music representing the struggles of the Finnish people under oppression and their desire to be free. And then in due course, a beautiful chorale theme enters, very hopeful, forward-looking, and optimistic. This beautiful chorale swells to overcome the discordant music, building to a triumphant finale. Finland would achieve its freedom only 20 years after this work was composed. Michael Goodwin's life was filled with triumphs, one of the greatest of which is the development of a vibrant Auburn Symphony, performing great programs at an extremely high level, serving its community in countless ways, and bringing people together for beautiful concerts like this. That beautiful Finlandia hymn tune, the chorale tune, has been chosen to set no fewer than 6 hymns that many of us would know. Amongst the ones that are popular in America are Be Still My Soul, We Rest on Thee, and the hymn that was my own father's favorite. This is my song. It's this hymn that I think of when I think of Michael. In the course of his lifetime, Michael made his home on 4 continents, in localities as diverse as London, Tehran, Adelaide, and here in the Sierra foothills, where he has friends from all over the world. The words of this hymn were written by British poet Lloyd Stone just a few years before Michael's birth in war-ravaged London in 1946. I would like to share the first 2 verses with you. This is my song, O God of all the nations. A song of peace for lands afar and mine. This is my home, the country where my heart is. Here are my hopes, my dreams, my holy shrine. But other hearts in other lands are beating with hopes and dreams as true and high as mine. My country's skies are bluer than the ocean, and sunlight beams on clover leaf and pine. But other lands have sunlight too, and clover, and skies are everywhere as blue as mine. This is my song, thou God of all the nations, a song of peace for their land and for mine. We will now see a brief video dedication to Michael, followed immediately by Elgar's Nimrod Variation from Enigma. The Enigma variations are essentially about friends. The 15 variations are each dedicated to one of Elgar's friends. Nimrod is commonly played for memorials in Britain and is played annually on Remembrance Day. It's broadcast nationally on Remembrance Day each year. It is about and dedicated to Augustus Jaeger, a good friend of Elgar's, who was a music editor who, in one of Elgar's darkest hours, when he was deeply depressed and considering giving up composition, rallied Elgar and brought him back from the brink and got him composing again by reminding him of the tribulations of Beethoven, and that as Beethoven faced more and more adversities, his music became greater and greater. So, Nimrod, being about friends who help friends, is very appropriate tonight because there are many friends of Michael in the room, friends who he supported in difficult times, friends who supported in difficult times. So we will end the concert following the video montage with the Nimrod Variation and ask that we complete the concert in silence, take a moment to think about Michael, and depart as we are ready. Thank you.
My name is Michael Goodwin. I'm the artistic director and conductor of the Auburn Symphony. I first decided that I wanted to be a conductor. In fact, it was like an experience almost like falling in love. I was in the little green room at the University of Leeds in the north of England, having considered that I would switch to social studies from music, and my tutor told me, in fact, well, he thought I would do better at music. And I saw a friend just handling a baton, and it was like an instant understanding, that is what I'm going to do. And from then, I did everything I possibly could. I practiced in front of the mirror, which I don't recommend, actually. That's not conducting at all. And I would go to rehearsals of the visiting orchestras that came to Leeds, like the London Symphony, and international orchestras like the Dresden Staatskapelle, speak with the conductors, observe the rehearsals, take notes, speak to musicians. It was just a complete passion that lasted the whole of the time I was at university. And finally, when I finished my undergraduate degree at Leeds, I won a place on the advanced conducting course at the Guildhall School of Music in London.
Having been an attendee of the Auburn Symphony for quite a long while, and I was honored to be invited to the first tea when Michael was brought into the symphony a number of years ago. And he then personified personified what a conductor ought to be, it seemed to me. But over the years, he's just underscored that by his knowledge, his handling of the symphony members, etc. What's impressive about Michael is his depth of knowledge and his relationship to the audience. Like Leonard Bernstein in Central Park on Sunday afternoons, who instructs the audience about the music to be heard, Michael educates the audience here as to what's going to be heard that evening and helps us all appreciate the music that much better. His depth of knowledge alone allows him to do that. His relationship with the audience allows that, and his relationship with the orchestra. He brings out of them something that was heretofore impossible, or at least difficult, and he has done that to make this arguably the best small-town orchestra in America.
Well, the Auburn Symphony is very interesting because the majority of the musicians do not live in Auburn. Almost all the wind players, with two exceptions, I think, come from Grass Valley, Nevada City area, Sacramento, some as far as Davis, which is really extraordinary, and they travel every week to work with the with me, with the orchestra here in Auburn. It's such a joy working with the Auburn Symphony because the musicians work so hard. Together we're able to almost take every concert to a new level. We played perhaps the most difficult piece we ever attempted, the Rachmaninoff Second Symphony, September 2010, here in Auburn, and it was astonishing, the level that they reached in this. And when we gave a performance at Mondavi, a professional musician friend of mine said to me, "This is no community orchestra." In other words, this sounded like a professional orchestra, and it's incredible the efforts they make and the response I get from this orchestra. It's very touching, and I've been with them now 17 years, and it's quite unusual for a relationship between conductor and orchestra to remain so strong and positive in such a long time. In life, I'm most passionate about being in the moment and being totally responsible for what I say and what I do, which of course I can't really do because no one can, or not as well as they'd like, let's say it like that. But that's the most important thing to me. And of course music. I could not live without it, I'm sure. Classical music, and I also enjoy lighter forms, particularly conducting them. I enjoy conducting them more than listening to them. But it seems to me that trying to live without being present to one's life is a complete waste of time.
Dios te salva María, llena eres de gracia. El Señor es contigo. Bendita eres entre las mujeres y bendito es el fruto de tu vientre, Jesús. Santa María, Madre de Dios, ruega, Señora, por nosotros los pecadores, ahora y en la hora de nuestra muerte. Que así sea.